Alright, people, midweek report time. So, boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, a lot to dissect and a lot to talk about in this video. The primary talking point is going to be obviously the Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou. We'll call it a fight that's been announced for October 28th in Saudi Arabia. I don't want to do this to death. I've already talked about it at length, I would like to feel, but my thoughts haven't changed on this. It really, to me, is just a shameless cash grab by Tyson Fury. In one sense, you could say for Francis Ngannou, it's nice that he gets a big payday, but at the end of the day, Tyson Fury, you have to look at it from a boxing sense. He is a reigning heavyweight champion. He's not made any attempt to unify. In fact, he's ducked unifications with Alexander Usyk. He's not made any attempt to fight any of his contenders. Frank Warren is talking absolute nonsense, saying, well, there's no one available to fight, when there's loads in the top 15 who were available, and actually calling Tyson Fury's name. And the fact is that he's going to have one fight, for want of a better word, but not officially a pro fight, in the calendar year of 2023. So his last official Queensberry fight, Marcus Queensberry rules, will be Derek Chisora, which by the time he sets foot in the ring again, if he does, will be 2022. He could not have an official fight until 2024, an official on the record fight until 2024. It's an absolute joke. It really is. Frank Warren is coming out and saying it's a game changer and stuff like this, which it absolutely isn't. And the WBC, they're enabling this. They really are. Sullivan, it's his job at the end of the day to find mandatories. It's the WBC's job to find mandatories, I should say, probably. Well, it is Sullivan's job as well. But it's their job to find mandatories for all their champions. There have been times where they've just plucked the mandatory out of thin air and forced it upon a fighter. They've done that in the past. All right, so when he's coming out and saying, he's exempted this and that, blah, 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 blah. No, you've done it for other fighters. But they're fighters who aren't, cash cow fighters. They're fighters who you're not making an absolute rake of money off. They're fighters you couldn't care less about. When it's a fighter you can't care less about, oh yeah, I'll just chuck mandatories left, right and centre at you. Savannah Marshall's only won her title and already she's got a mandatory chucked at her. A very good example, very recent example of the WBC literally plucking a mandatory out of thin air, and this is quite recent, 2021, was with Artur Beterbiev. So Artur Beterbiev, he had the WBC title, still does, and just before Callum Smith was made mandatory, he had no mandatory. He had no mandatory in 21, and then out of nowhere, they announced that Marcus Brown was his mandatory and that he had to fight, which he did, and obviously he won that fight. But Marcus Brown hadn't fought at light heavyweight since 2019 and hadn't fought a WBC sanctioned bout in God knows how long. He'd only had one fight in the interim, and that was a 10-rounder. I think he was over 180 pounds, which was a non-title fight. So they literally just plucked him out of thin air and said, here's a mandatory now fight. So they can't do it. They have done it in the past, but for Tyson Fury, they won't do. Tony Bellew has actually made comments about this whole Tyson Fury situation, which I will try to bring up, because Tony Bellew kind of, you can tell this is more him speaking his mind, but he should really feel, you can tell he is a bit, he says, people want to see it, I'm not going to lie, I'll watch it. It is going to be entertaining, it will do great financially as a boxing spectacle, it's a mismatch, a joke, but I can't knock him, it's really good for business, which is interesting. Normally when it's not a DAZN fighter, Bellew would normally take a you-know-what on it. He said on whether Fury should be stripped of his title, he says, I don't believe he should be stripped at all. These freak shows have been happening throughout the legacy of boxing, and they'll continue to happen so long as people are paying to watch. Well, Tony Bellew should feel aggrieved, and I'll tell you why, because I've used this example. Tony Bellew won his cruiserweight title off Ilunga Makabu in May of 2016. He made a voluntary defence against BJ Flores, and mandatory challenger was Myris Bradis. He beat Ola Duradola for that right. Now, Bellew wanted the David Haye fight, and he got the David Haye fight. So he moved to heavyweight to fight David Haye. Now, the resolution was put in place that WBC wouldn't give him any exemption or anything like that. They would strip him of his title and make him champion in recess. Whether you think that's fair or not remains to be seen. But at the end of the day, they were like, you've got a mandatory, you got to fight him, we're stripping you. You can come back and have a crack at any time, but don't think you're going to go and fight David Haye at heavyweight and not hold on to our title, or just hold our title hostage. It's not going to happen. So they did that with Tony Bellew. But with Tyson Fury, it's just like, do what you want. Do what you want. But to me, that, there's no consistency there. With Bellew, He moved up to fight David Haye. I know it's easy to look back in hindsight and say, oh, David Haye was shot to pieces. At the end of the day, he's still a professional fighter. And at the time, we knew he didn't look quite the same, but we didn't know how far gone he was. It was, for many people from the outside looking in, it was a competitive fight. So that is one example where the WBC, where a fight which is more a kind of well, it's a real fight. David Haye, Tony Bellew, both fights, but it was more a spectacle rather than there was no titles on the line or anything like that. It was again more a spectacle. But the WBC, they acted and they said, no, you've mandatory, you got to fight him. Obviously with Fury it is a bit different. He doesn't have a mandatory, but it's their job to try and find him one. It's absolutely crazy. We haven't been told how much the pay-per-view is going to be, because it's going to be on pay-per-view. People were asking me, do I think it'll be on pay-per-view? It's like, don't ask me that question. It will be on pay-per-view. It's a case of how much will it be, because Fury charged, or Frank Warren Fury charged $27.99, or was it $27.99 or $26? It was in around. It was more. I think it was still more than the Joshua versus White fight will be. That was for Chisora. God knows how much it's going to be for this. Really, God knows. In terms of fights that have been ordered, the WBA have now actually scheduled a purse bid for O'Hara Davis versus Rolly Romero. Some other news that's going out here. July the 24th, Rolly will get a 75-25% split. O'Hara Davis about to become a world champion, lads. Might do it before the end of the year. O'Hara Davis may very well become a world champion. He really may, because I would be picking him heavily over Rolly Romero, who may be the worst champion in boxing. The weakest anyway. Alright, so watch the space there. Jay Opataya, I've done a video on this, has signed with Eddie Hearn. He's obviously going to be co-promoted by Eddie Hearn and Tasman Fighters, but he has signed with Eddie Hearn, and I think that's a very, very good move for Eddie Hearn and for Jay Opataya as well, signing that deal, because Jay Opataya is gaining a name amongst hardcores, but I think he has the potential to be sold even to the casual market. He's going to be big in the Oceanic region. Eddie Hearn has a perfect, I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but if he's ever struggling with a card in the UK or in America, he's a perfect co-main event, and he can headline his shows in Australia, New Zealand, etc. So, very good move, and I'm very high, as many of you will know, but I think it's fantastic. So, a great move by Eddie Hearn there. And, it will make, Ben Shalom's going to have to work with Eddie Hearn. If he wants to do a unification with Chris Billum-Smith, he's going to have to work with him. There's no ifs or buts. And, obviously with the Fraser-Clark fight, Ben Shalom was kind of saying, look, you're not ready and stuff like that. Some people were saying that he just doesn't want to work with Eddie Hearn. I don't know about that, but it kind of means that if he wants to do unifications for Billum-Smith, he's going to have to work with Eddie Hearn, because Jay Opataya has a title. Gulamarian, he's the kind of odd one out there. I'm glad this has been picked up, but pay-per-view, really? So, Errol Spence, Terence Crawford, because I was actually wondering myself a few days ago, who is going to pick this fight up in the UK? Because it won't be like a Fight TV or something like that. It's a big fight. It's going to be picked up by a network, but just which one? It's been picked up by TNT Sports. Obviously, they were known as BT Sports. It's going to be on pay-per-view, prices to be confirmed. That is a bit disappointing. Like, don't get me wrong, I'll pay for it, because I love this fight. I'll pay for it. I have no problem with that. But it's on at an unsociable time. There's a raft of pay-per-views coming up. There's loads of them coming up. And another one on top of that. Now, that would be TNT. Well, say BT. That's BT Sport, TNT Sport. It's the same thing. That's them and not Warren. Warren doesn't have a say in that. That's them deciding, let's put this on pay-per-view behind a paywall. This is one fight that I will say it is worth the price. It is worth paying for. It genuinely is. But the fact that they aren't, these two, as big a names on this end of the pond as they are in the States, and the fact that we are getting that at an unsociable time. If it was a Fury fight, like a Wilder fight again, or something like that, you'd understand it. If it was Joshua versus whoever, Usyk or someone like that in the States, you'd understand it, because they're big on this end of the pond. And they're reasonably, well, Fury is probably the bigger name in the States, well, definitely than Joshua, but you get what I'm saying, you get where I'm coming from. Bit disappointed it's on pay-per-view. Will I be paying for it? You damn right I will. I will not be missing this fight for the world. I will not be missing it for the world. Watch along, all that good stuff. I can't wait, lads. Like, honestly, like, we're not far off it now. We're not far off it now, and I'm still excited when I see it. Like, Crawford, Spence, yes! I'm so excited. I really am. I'm very, very excited with it. I really, really am. In terms of some of the other news, I talked about this in a recent video. Billy Joe Saunders making a comeback, running around on the treadmill, saying that, he wants to become a 3-weight world champion, kind of hinting that he's going to come back. And sorry, I missed this here. The price of the pay-per-view for Terence Crawford Spence is actually going to be £19.95. So £20, be about €25 over here. Missed that part, apologies. But in terms of Billy Joe Saunders, yeah, I spoke about it. Look, we do not have a prime Billy Joe Saunders. Under no stretch of the imagination do we have a prime Billy Joe Saunders. He definitely isn't the Billy Joe Saunders of old. He's not the Billy Joe of who fought David Lemieux. I don't know if we've ever even come close to that Billy Joe. I don't even know if the Billy Joe who fought Canelo was even close to the Billy Joe who fought Lemieux, because that Billy Joe... Now, to be fair, you gotta look at it from, one point of view and say that stylistically you couldn't have got a better style for Billy Joe than David Lemieux. But at the end of the day, Billy Joe still had to go in there and do the job. And he did it quite well. He did it very well that night. We will never get that Billy Joe back again. But how far has he fallen from that? I reckon a lot. I reckon he's fallen an absolute I reckon he's fallen way off the hill since then. And it's really going to be interesting to see when he comes back against who it may be. I do not know. I can't imagine it's going to be anybody good. But to see how far he's fallen, we'll really only see it when he's back in the ring. It's going to be interesting, certainly, to see, but I'm not expecting miracles from Billy Joe in his comeback. And if he's going to do it at light heavyweight, he's in for a rude awakening, because those guys are big, they're massive. He was never a 168-pounder. His best weight was always 160, and now he's going in at 175 pounds potentially. That's got recipe for disaster written all over it. Beterbiev is one of the guys there. He's an absolute killer. He will annihilate Billy Joe, as will Dimitri Bivol, in my opinion, as would Joe Smith, Yard, Boazzi, etc. Even Dan Aziz, people like that at light heavyweight, because I think Billy Joe has fallen way off the hill, and I think that's way out of his natural way anyway. So we'll watch. Look, we've been hearing stories of Billy Joe coming back now for a while. It's never materialised. He's let hints of himself in training and stuff like that, but we've never really seen anything of it. So let's watch the space and see what happens there. In terms of fights that are happening this weekend, obviously Josh Kelly is back to the ring. He's fighting Gabriel Alberto Corzo. That's obviously on the Zone, but it's a Wasserman show, so Wasserman and Josh Kelly are working together. That's up in Newcastle. Who was on the undercard? Kwesi Akwif? I think so you say that name, against Liam Dillon. Okay, we'll have a look at that fight. Steve Robinson, yeah, he is fun to watch. I'm not gonna lie, Steve Robinson, he is fun to watch. He's fighting a guy called Franklin Ignix or something like that. He's got 2 wins. Well, no, he's got a draw and a win over Jose Stewart. Jose Stewart is that absolute massive, huge guy who's he's got to be well over 300 pounds, who just, I don't know, people were kind of showing all of his fights at one stage when he was turning over. He just looked more like a freak show. So he's in there with Steve Robinson, who is one of the most crudest fighters you'll ever see. He really is. He's very crude. So that's the DAZN card on the weekend. In terms of the Spence Crawford card, there's fights that have been announced. So Isaac Cruz is going to be on there. Nonito Donaire is going to be on there. Delighted with that. Nonito Donaire versus Alexandro Santiago. It's rumoured to be, I think it is actually going to be for the vacant WBC bantamweight title. So Donaire looking to break his own record, because obviously he has the record currently for the oldest bantamweight champion, and obviously that was 2 years ago, so he's 2 years older now. So he's looking to break that record again, and we love Nonito Donaire on this channel. We really do. We love Nonito Donaire. I think he's tremendous. It really was hard viewing seeing him in there against Inoue last time around. That wasn't an easy fight to watch. It only went 2 rounds, but still, it was not an easy fight to watch. We love Nonito Donaire. We really do. So apparently Teofimo Lopez has made a U-turn on his retirement from boxing, deciding that he's not going to vacate his WBO 140-pound title. Has now called out Devin Haney. So Haney was replied, "Let's do it." So that retirement lasted a very long time. Little over a month, if even. Well done. So he didn't vacate the title. Apparently he'd only said it. He had to officially do it with the WBO, which he never did. So apparently he is still WBO 140-pound champion. Let's see what he does. With regards to Devin Haney, I'm nearly sure, where have I seen it? I'm nearly sure I seen an article about Shakur Stevenson saying that his management team have reached out to Devin Haney, which is a fight that I would much prefer. Shakur Stevenson is actually sparring currently at the minute Terence Crawford, which is great preparation. It really is, because Shakur, we know, is tremendously talented. Oh, here it is. Shakur Stevenson's managers have formally contacted the WBC and requested that they order Devin Haney to defend his undisputed world titles against Shakur with a 50-50 split. I don't know if they'll agree to that, even the WBC, but they are trying their best to get that fight over the line. Obviously, we had the UK press conference for Alexander Usyk, but we did have that during the week, Dylan White versus Anthony Joshua. But we've had the UK conference for Alexander Usyk and Daniel Dubois. Not the most lively press conferences you'll ever see, but the fight is happening. Obviously, it's going to happen on August 26th. It's going to be interesting. I see people on here making cases for Dubois. I don't see him winning at all. But does he have tools in his game that could potentially see him win? Yeah, he is very strong. He definitely has a punch, and Daniel Dubois is a tremendous punter. He is. And with that kind of power, you've always got an equalizer. You really do. So, is it out the realms of possibility that he could beat Alexander Usyk? Of course not. It's heavyweight boxing, anything can happen. But I just don't see it. And at the end of the day, you're only as good as your last performance. And yes, Daniel Dubois did win his last fight. He won it in the third round. But that was one of the shakiest performances you'll see. Kevin Lorena is not even a devastating puncher anyway. And, he had Dubois down in the first round. And I think the other two knockdowns were more Daniel Dubois voluntarily going down as opposed to being concussed. But the fact that he still did that itself is alarming. There was people saying, he was saying to McGuigan he wanted to quit after a round. Again, alarming. But on the flip side, you could say, but he came through that adversity and he won the fight, which in my way of looking at it would be, that's got to be a plus, because that will do you more good than harm, because you could say, look, I wanted to call it, I thought I would, but I came through it and I won. So maybe that's the way he'll take it. I don't know. Prince Nassim's son will be making his professional debut on this card as well. I'd heard rumours about Prince Nassim's son turning pro for a while now. Interesting. More news on the Conor Benn situation from Mail Sport. So, part of Conor Benn's defence in his UCAD case reportedly now centres around arguments about whether he is outside UCAD's jurisdiction because he gave his British Boxing Board a control licence, and whether UCAD can rule on drug test samples collected by VADA. It is one thing after another. It's one reason why he's not guilty. Apparently, the investigation outcome is going to come this week. Well, tomorrow is Friday, so I'm assuming it means we're going to get some clarification tomorrow. Let's wait and see. At the end of the day, Conor Benn, right? And I think this is the thing that him and his team, surely Eddie Hearn must know. Conor Benn is pretty dumb, so I'm sure he probably hasn't put two and two together yet. But he has done his stock so much harm, his appearance so much harm with this, and it's not stemming from the fact that he's failed 2 drugs tests. It doesn't help it, right? But the fact that he's been so belligerent, so just abrasive, just so in some ways disrespectful to people with this whole situation. He's been behaving like a spoiled brat, like throwing his toys out of the pram. He's been enabled by Eddie Hearn, stuff like that. He's making up silly excuses. He's trying to play mental health cards and all that stuff. All that's done is F people off and turn people off Conor Benn. And that is probably why he's getting... People say, he's getting so much backlash. He's getting so much backlash because he really hasn't helped himself. He's behaved like an entitled little brat. When he's failed 2 tests, he's just been like, everyone's out to get me. Why are they out to get me? You failed 2 tests, mate. And you're doing everything to avoid the elephant in the room with the fact that you failed 2 tests. Whether you say it's this or that, you failed them. The best thing you can do is shut your mouth, right? And let the process go ahead. Stop trying to, have a go at everyone who says, whoa, this is the situation with this. Just keep your mouth shut, because all you're doing when you open it is you're digging a deeper hole. You know, UCAD backdated. If UCAD do ban him, and he does end up getting a suspension, it could potentially go from March of this year rather than September or August of last year, because you have been so belligerent with them, because you've been dragging their name and the board's name through the mud the whole way through this. And all that is leaving a bad taste in the mouth of the fans, and it's not endearing you to the board or UCAD. Right? You have to understand that that's going to happen. You know, you can't, it'd be like, imagine, right, let's just say, right, like, imagine you're an employee, right, and say you're genuinely innocent. Say an employee, say you work in a bank, an employer accuses you of stealing money, right, and you know you haven't done it, and the CCTV, everything can back it up, right? Okay, what do? You let the situation proceed. You know, they observe the CCTV, they check where you were. Oh, yep, Conor Ben was on his break at the time and the CCTV exonerate him. My sincerest apologies, let's move on. Right? What you don't do is you don't turn around and say, before he's even done his investigation, and say, you're out to get me, it's this, it's that, you know, yous are all rah, I'm just, you know, this is this, that, you know, I'm even going to throw away my, and then all of a sudden you get exonerated and be like, hey, do you remember all that stuff I said? Try and forget it. Oh, you're not gonna. Okay. That's kind of what it's like. That's literally what it's like. The British Boxing Board of Control have ordered Fabio Wadley to defend his title, not against Frederick Clark, British Boxing Board of Control, the British Championship, but against David Adelaide next. Purse bids on August the 9th. Let's see, will Fish Eyes decide to go down that road? Let's see. Interesting. Jared Anderson said that he'd be back out on August, sometime in August, and Bob Arum was talking about having the Zabutsky fight. Koyabutsky, I think is how you pronounce it. I'm probably butchering there. I think off the top of my head here. But the guy was originally meant to face, but he ended up fighting Charles Martin. They were talking about doing that fight then. Well, they're not doing that. He's going to fight Andrei Rudenko. Now, I think that is smart. They're putting the brakes on him. You know, obviously he won the Charles Martin fight, but he did have some rocky moments. Rudenko is tough and durable, right? He is. He very seldom gets stopped. In fact, I can't remember the last time Rudenko got stopped. You know, Andrei Rudenko. To go on BoxRec here, and we'll have a look-see, because I think Lucas Brown might have stopped him. But that might be he's only been stopped once, and that was in 2021 by Vladsev Serenko, who is, I'm assuming, Ukrainian, given that name. Let's have a look. I'm not signed into BoxRec at the minute now on this iPhone, so I'll have to sign in. And I'm just curious, just want to view and just see what this guy is like, because I haven't heard of him. So if he's stopping Rudenko, it'll take some stopping. Doesn't have his age here. 6'3", 16-0 with 19 knockouts. Stopped Ustinov in a round. Went the distance with Sokolowski, Konstantin Dobyshenko. Everyone seems to go the distance with him. Lost rounds in that fight. Very close, actually, on one of the scorecards. Interesting. And this is the guy who stopped Rudenko. And as I said, Rudenko doesn't normally get stopped, so given the fact he was stopped at the end of 21, that might mean that the punch resistance, that was his most recent loss, that might mean the punch resistance is starting to wane with Rudenko. Normally you could rely on him to get the rounds in the bank. Normally you could rely on him. So let's see. They need to pump the brakes a little bit on Anderson, because there's mistakes there. There is holes. There's so much talent at the same time though. So maybe it's a case of another 2 fights this year, step up from Rudenko, and then see what way the heavyweight landscape is next year. I think that's probably what they're going to do. I think that Charles Martin, that fight, I don't want to say it frightened them, but I think it made them realise, okay, look, he's not quite ready. And there's nothing wrong with, taking the brakes off him a little bit. Nothing wrong with that. So that's the situation in the world of boxing. So, hope you enjoyed the video, people. I've been enjoying doing the content the last few days. I have to say it's been a lot of fun. We've seen a lot of good growth, and long may it last. Long may the sub count keep coming. We're getting closer to 12k, and then it's on to 13, 14, etc. 15 by the end of the year. I would like to do it. Hopefully, let's see. Fingers crossed. Hopefully by the time I move out of Ireland, that will probably be the end of this year, start of next year. But hopefully by then we're in a real good place with the channel that we can, use this platform to kind of help, further the cause, so to speak. But lads, I've been enjoying this video. I hope you enjoyed it too. I enjoy talking about it. Plenty more to come. A lot of boxing stories to talk about, a lot more videos to talk about. Spence Crawford, we got to do more videos on that, of course. But for now, I will leave you with that. If you could, lads and lassies, hit the like button, smash it, jab it, do whatever you got to do, but just hit the old like button, boost your boy up in the algorithms, get the channel out there, get it, more people seeing it. If you could do that, I'd appreciate it. It takes literally 2 seconds and it's free to subscribe. So whilst you're here, if you haven't already, button's down there. If you go hit subscribe, it'd be pretty damn nice. And other than that, I'll talk to you people. I hope you have a great one. Peace.